I need to tell you about something happening inside your body at this very moment. A malfunctioning control system buried deep in your brain that's pushing your blood pressure dangerously high, regardless of how faithfully you take your medications. I'm Dr. Elena Morrison. For the past 20 years as a doctor, I've witnessed countless patients religiously take their blood pressure pills, sometimes 4, 5, even 6 different medications, only to watch their numbers creep right back up by mid-afternoon, surge again in the evening, and spike dangerously high the next morning. It's an exhausting, demoralizing cycle. And the worst part? It's not their fault. These aren't patients who cheat on their medication schedule. They're not binging on salty foods or living sedentary lives. I'm describing responsible, health-conscious people who follow every single instruction their doctors give them, yet their blood pressure continues its dangerous climb. So their physicians respond the only way they know how: upping dosages, layering on additional drugs, experimenting with new combinations. But nothing creates lasting stability. What I'm going to reveal challenges the fundamental narrative you've been fed about hypertension treatment. The conventional medical system insists this is purely a mechanical problem. Your heart's pumping with too much force, your arterial walls have stiffened with age, and pharmaceutical intervention is your only realistic option. But after 2 decades of examining patients, studying brain imaging, and diving deep into cardiovascular neuroscience, I've discovered the truth. This isn't a mechanical pump malfunction. This is a regulatory thermostat breakdown. Deep within your brainstem lies a control center that's supposed to automatically monitor and regulate your blood pressure. But it's malfunctioning. It's lost its ability to accurately detect when your pressure climbs too high. Imagine a home thermostat permanently stuck reading 72 degrees while your house swelters at 98. The furnace keeps blasting hot air because the sensor can no longer register the actual temperature. That's exactly what's happening inside your body. Your blood pressure keeps climbing higher and higher because the monitoring system in your brainstem has essentially gone blind. By the time this video ends, you'll understand precisely why your medications eventually lose their effectiveness, what's actually damaged in your brainstem's regulatory center, and most critically, how to restore this control system using 2 remarkably simple hand techniques requiring less than 5 minutes total. This isn't theory or guesswork. This is established neurophysiology backed by peer-reviewed research, working through specific nerve pathways and biochemical mechanisms I'm going to explain in complete detail. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover could eliminate those terrifying afternoon pressure spikes, dramatically reduce your morning stroke risk, and potentially allow you to cut your medication burden in half under proper medical supervision. Let's begin by understanding what's truly governing your blood pressure moment by moment. The hidden command center. Most people assume blood pressure is simply controlled by heart function. Heart pumps harder, pressure rises. Heart pumps gentler, pressure drops. That's partially accurate, but it's dangerously incomplete. The true command center controlling every aspect of your cardiovascular system is buried deep within your brainstem in a region called the rostral ventrolateral medulla. We'll call it the RVLM for short. Think of your RVLM as air traffic control for your entire circulatory system. 24 hours a day, it's receiving constant incoming data from pressure sensors stationed throughout your body, analyzing that information in real time, and broadcasting precise commands to either elevate or reduce your pressure based on what your body needs at any given second. The most critical sensors in this network are called baroreceptors, and they're strategically embedded in your carotid arteries, those major blood vessels running up both sides of your neck that supply oxygenated blood directly to your brain. These baroreceptors function like microscopic pressure-sensitive nerve endings woven into your arterial walls. When blood pressure rises, these sensors physically stretch. When they stretch, they fire rapid electrical signals to your RVLM, essentially saying, "Pressure's climbing too high. Bring it down, now." Your RVLM responds immediately by reducing what's called sympathetic tone, essentially your body's fight or flight activation level, the background stress signal running through your nervous system. Lower sympathetic tone triggers a cascade of effects. Your blood vessels relax and widen, your heart rate decreases, and your blood pressure drops accordingly. This continuous feedback loop, called the baroreflex, is designed to keep your pressure stable automatically, unconsciously, without you thinking about it, without any medication, operating flawlessly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But here's where everything falls apart, and this is the critical mechanism most doctors never properly explain to their patients. Those baroreceptors embedded in your carotid arteries don't maintain their flexibility forever. Starting around age 50 and accelerating dramatically after 60, the arterial walls where these sensors are embedded begin to stiffen. Calcium deposits accumulate. Elasticity diminishes. The condition we call arteriosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, takes hold. When the arterial wall becomes rigid and inflexible, the baroreceptors embedded within that wall can no longer stretch properly. And if they can't stretch, they cannot accurately sense pressure changes anymore. It's like trying to feel the texture of silk fabric while wearing thick leather work gloves. The information is there, but you've lost the sensitivity to detect it. This condition is called baroreflex failure, and it's the hidden reason why your blood pressure medications eventually stop working. Let me tell you about Richard. Richard's story. The thermostat breakdown. Richard was 68 years old when he first came to my office, a retired aerospace engineer, methodical and detail-oriented. He'd been battling escalating blood pressure problems for 5 years. When he was initially diagnosed with hypertension at 63, a single medication brought his pressure down to a perfect 125/78, textbook control. But over the following 5 years, his pressure gradually crept upward. His doctor added a second medication. Pressure dropped for about 6 months, then climbed back up. Added a third drug. Same frustrating pattern, temporary improvement followed by relapse. By the time Richard sat across from me in my consultation room, he was taking 4 different blood pressure medications every single day. His morning readings were marginally acceptable at 132/80, but by 3 o'clock every afternoon, he'd spiked to 168/94. His evening readings would hit 172/96. His cardiologist wanted to add a 5th medication. I ordered a specialized diagnostic test called baroreflex sensitivity testing. The results confirmed exactly what I suspected. Richard's baroreceptors had essentially stopped functioning. His carotid arteries had stiffened so severely that his pressure sensors could no longer stretch enough to detect changes. His RVLM was flying completely blind, operating without accurate pressure data. So it defaulted to a protective survival mode, keeping sympathetic tone elevated constantly, just in case. Every pill Richard swallowed was fighting a losing battle against this broken feedback system. The medication would temporarily force his pressure downward, but his RVLM, unable to sense pressure accurately, would misinterpret that drop as dangerously low blood pressure, possibly indicating shock. In response, it would panic and ramp up sympathetic tone even harder to push the pressure back up. Richard wasn't medication resistant. His baroreflex was shattered. The vicious neurological cycle. The mechanism behind this is insidious and self-perpetuating. When your baroreceptors fail, your RVLM loses its reference point for what normal pressure should be. Imagine driving a car where the speedometer is permanently stuck at 0. You have no idea if you're going 30 miles per hour or 80. You have 0 feedback. Your brain defaults to keeping you in a heightened state of alertness, elevated sympathetic tone, elevated pressure, because it interprets this lack of sensor feedback as a potential emergency situation. This is why your pressure suddenly spikes at 3 in the afternoon when you're just sitting quietly at your desk, doing absolutely nothing stressful. This is why you wake up at 6 in the morning with pressure through the roof despite sleeping peacefully all night. Your RVLM isn't responding to actual stress. It's responding to sensor failure. Now here's where it becomes even more maddening for patients like Richard. Your doctor sees your elevated pressure and increases your medication dosage. The higher dose forces your pressure down, let's say from 168 down to 135. Your baroreceptors, which are already stiff and barely sensitive, now detect an even larger pressure drop. They send weak, distorted panic signals to your RVLM, screaming that something is dangerously wrong. Your RVLM interprets this as your body potentially going into shock. It floods your system with adrenaline and noradrenaline, powerful chemicals that constrict your blood vessels and accelerate your heart rate. Within just a few hours, your pressure climbs right back up, completely overpowering the medication you just took. You're trapped in a neurological war between your pills and your malfunctioning baroreflex. And your baroreflex is winning because it's directly wired into your survival instincts, the most primitive, powerful drives your body possesses. This is precisely why patients on 4, 5, even 6 blood pressure medications still suffer from uncontrolled hypertension. The pills are targeting the pump, but the broken thermostat keeps overriding every pharmaceutical intervention. You're not fixing the control system, you're fighting against it, and you cannot win that fight with more medication, because additional drugs just make your RVLM panic harder and fight back more aggressively. This neurological feedback loop is the hidden epidemic behind treatment-resistant hypertension. And almost nobody in mainstream medicine is addressing it because the pharmaceutical model doesn't have a pill that repairs baroreceptors. But there is a solution, a way to reset this entire system, not with medication, not with surgery, with targeted stimulation of specific nerve pathways that completely bypass your broken baroreceptors and directly calm your RVLM. I'm going to teach you 2 techniques right now. The first technique stops an acute pressure spike in under 30 seconds by activating an ancient pain relief pathway that immediately shuts down your sympathetic nervous system. The second technique resets your long-term pressure set point by triggering a powerful chemical cascade that repairs your blood vessel function and recalibrates your RVLM over a period of weeks. Both techniques use nothing except your hands. No equipment required, no side effects. Just documented neurophysiology working through mechanisms I'm going to explain in precise detail. Before we continue, I need you to do something critical for me. If what you've heard so far resonates with you, if you're exhausted from taking more and more pills while your pressure keeps spiking out of control, I'm asking for 2 things. First, hit that subscribe button right now. My mission is to share medical mechanisms and practical techniques that your doctor either doesn't know about or doesn't have time to properly explain. This is life-saving information that shouldn't be locked behind medical jargon. Second, share this video with anyone you know who's struggling with blood pressure that refuses to stay controlled. A simple share could literally change someone's life, maybe even save it. Thank you for your support. Now let me show you exactly how to reset your broken baroreflex. Technique 1. The emergency brake. Stop what you're doing and hold your left hand up in front of your face. Look carefully at the webbing between your thumb and index finger. That soft, fleshy, triangular area where the 2 bones meet. In traditional Chinese medicine, this point is called Hegu, or LI4, in acupuncture terminology. Acupuncturists have been needling this specific point for thousands of years to treat pain and various other conditions, but they didn't understand the actual physiological mechanism. Now we do. That webbing contains a specific muscle called the first dorsal interosseous muscle. And running directly through that muscle are 2 major nerve branches, the deep branch of the radial nerve and the median nerve. When you compress this point with sustained, focused pressure, you simultaneously activate both nerve branches, sending powerful signals up through your spinal cord to your brainstem that trigger something called the opioidergic descending pathway. This pathway represents your brain's built-in pain and stress control system. It releases endogenous opioids, natural morphine-like chemicals that your own body produces internally. And these opioids don't just block pain signals. They directly and powerfully inhibit your sympathetic nervous system. They command your RVLM to immediately lower sympathetic tone. They reduce the release of adrenaline and noradrenaline from your adrenal glands. They cause your blood vessels to dilate and your heart rate to slow. This isn't mysticism, folklore, or placebo effect. This is documented, published neuroscience. When you stimulate the Hegu point correctly, researchers can measure the drop in plasma catecholamines, the stress chemicals circulating in your bloodstream, within 60 seconds. Here's exactly what I want you to do right now. Take your right hand and place your right thumb on top of that webbing on your left hand, positioned right in the center between the thumb and index finger bones. Now place your right index finger underneath, directly opposite your thumb, on the palm side. You're going to pinch this area firmly, squeezing the muscle tissue between your thumb and finger. The pressure should be strong enough to create a very specific sensation. You're looking for what acupuncturists call diqi, a dull, heavy, aching numbness that radiates into your hand and up into your forearm. If you feel sharp, stabbing pain, you're pressing too hard, or you're slightly off the correct spot, adjust your fingers slightly until you find the spot that creates that deep, spreading ache. That ache is the signal you need. That's the nerve activation we're after. Ready? Squeeze now. Firm, sustained pressure on that webbing. Hold it steady while I explain what's happening inside your body at this exact moment. The deep radial nerve and median nerve are firing rapid signals up through your spinal cord directly to your brainstem. These signals arrive at a region called the periaqueductal gray, the PAG, which serves as your brain's primary pain control center. The PAG immediately releases enkephalins and endorphins, your body's natural opioids, which flow down to your RVLM. The RVLM receives these opioid signals and interprets them as a direct command to reduce sympathetic outflow throughout your entire body. Within seconds, your sympathetic nervous system begins to quiet down. Your adrenal glands stop pumping out adrenaline. The background level of noradrenaline circulating in your bloodstream starts to drop. Your heart rate begins to slow. The smooth muscle cells lining your artery walls, which were contracted tight just moments ago, start to relax. Your blood vessels dilate. Vascular resistance drops. Pressure falls. This is happening right now as you hold this pressure. Keep squeezing. We're at 15 seconds now. The beauty of this technique is that your baroreceptors aren't involved in this process at all. We're completely bypassing your broken sensors and going straight to the command center, the RVLM, through an entirely different neural pathway. At 20 seconds, you should start feeling your hand warming up. That's increased blood flow from vasodilation. Your fingers might tingle. That's the opioid effect on your peripheral nerves. Your breathing might naturally slow down. That's your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest system, taking over from your sympathetic system. 25 seconds now. Almost there. Your cortisol levels are dropping. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone, and it's been keeping your blood vessels constricted. As it clears from your bloodstream, your vessels open up even further. 30 seconds. Release now. Let go of the pressure completely. Open your hand and relax your fingers fully. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for 2 seconds. Now exhale slowly through your mouth. Good. What you just did was activate your opioidergic pathway to directly inhibit sympathetic tone. If you were to check your blood pressure right this moment, you'd likely see a drop of 8 to 15 points systolic. Some people see even more, especially if they were elevated to begin with. But understand, this is just the emergency brake. This stops an acute spike when you feel your pressure rising. When you feel that tension building in your head, when you sense your heart pounding harder, this technique gives you immediate relief. But to fix the underlying problem, to reset your RVLM's baseline set point so it stops cranking up your pressure all day long, we need to do something more sophisticated and powerful. We need to trigger a repair mechanism deep within your blood vessels that recalibrates your entire cardiovascular control system. Technique 2. The thermostat reset, the complete 12-minute protocol. Now we're going to do this together. Not a summary, not a demonstration. The actual protocol right now, all 4 rounds. And I'm going to coach you through every single second. Grab something to squeeze. A rolled up towel, a tennis ball, a stress ball, whatever you have available. If you have nothing, you can simply make a tight fist. Hold it in your right hand. Get comfortable in your chair. Feet flat on the floor. Back supported against the backrest. This isn't a casual exercise. This is a medical intervention. Treat it that way. Before we start, final safety check that could save your life. You will breathe continuously throughout every squeeze, in through your nose, out through your mouth, steady, rhythmic breathing. If you hold your breath during the squeeze, you trigger what's called a Valsalva maneuver. Your intrathoracic pressure spikes. Your venous return to the heart gets compressed. Your cardiac output drops suddenly. Your RVLM detects this and panics, flooding you with massive amounts of adrenaline to compensate. Your blood pressure can explode upward by 40 to 60 points within seconds. You could rupture a blood vessel. You could trigger a stroke. You could cause a heart attack. So the rule is absolutely non-negotiable. Breathe continuously. If you catch yourself holding your breath at any point, stop the squeeze immediately. Reset your breathing, then resume. Your safety depends on this. Understood? Good. Round 1. Right hand squeeze. Phase right hand. Object ready. Squeeze now at 30% effort, not your maximum crushing grip. About 1/3 of your hardest possible squeeze. Find that pressure level and hold it steady. Good. Now breathe with me. Inhale through your nose. 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again. Inhale through your nose. 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Keep that rhythm. I'll guide you through the entire 30 seconds. Right now, at this exact moment, you're compressing your brachial artery, the major artery running down the inside of your upper arm. When you squeeze at this intensity, you're creating partial occlusion. Blood flow through that vessel is restricted by about 40 to 50%. Your forearm muscles downstream from that compression are receiving less oxygen than they need. They're starting to shift into anaerobic metabolism, burning through stored glycogen without oxygen. This produces lactate, lactic acid, the burning sensation you feel during intense exercise. Inhale through your nose, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're at 10 seconds now. Check your grip intensity. Are you still at 30%? Most people unconsciously squeeze harder as time passes. Don't do that. Back off slightly if you've crept above 30%. The intensity matters. Too hard triggers the wrong physiological reflex. Keep it steady. Keep breathing. Your muscle cells are releasing adenosine right now. Adenosine is a metabolic waste product that accumulates when cells can't get enough oxygen. But adenosine is also a powerful vasodilator, a chemical signal that tells your blood vessels to open up, to dilate as wide as possible to try to bring in more blood. Your arteries are responding to that adenosine signal. The vessels in your forearm are dilating maximally, but they can't actually get more blood because you're still compressing the main supply line upstream. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 15 seconds, halfway there. How does your hand feel? You should feel pressure, tightness, maybe a dull ache building in your forearm muscles. That's the lactate accumulation. That's the oxygen debt growing. This is exactly what we want. We're creating controlled ischemia, temporary, safe, therapeutic oxygen deprivation that sets up the rebound effect we need. Behind your squeeze point, up in your upper arm and shoulder, blood is backing up. Your brachial artery above the compression is dilating. The vessel walls are stretching. Blood pressure inside that segment of artery is increasing because blood keeps flowing in from your heart, but the outflow is restricted by your squeeze. It's like putting your thumb over the end of a garden hose. Water backs up. The hose swells. Pressure builds. That's happening in your artery right now. Inhale through your nose. Don't hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 20 seconds. You're doing great. Maintain that 30% squeeze. Don't let up yet. Your endothelial cells, the single layer of cells lining your artery walls, are being stretched and compressed simultaneously. They're being primed. They're preparing to release a massive burst of nitric oxide the instant you release this pressure. The enzyme eNOS, endothelial nitric oxide synthase, is activated. It's locked and loaded, waiting for the signal. Your oxygen debt is accumulating. Your muscle cells have produced enough adenosine that your vessels are dilated to absolute maximum capacity. Everything is ready. The dam is about to break. Just hold this for 5 more seconds. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 25 seconds. Almost there. Keep that pressure steady. Keep breathing. Don't hold your breath. Your metabolic waste products have reached critical mass. Your blood vessels are screaming to open. 28 seconds. 29, 30. Release now. Drop it. Let go completely. Open your hand wide. Spread your fingers apart. Relax every muscle in your arm and hand. Complete relaxation. Now pay close attention. Watch what happens. Rest phase. Can you feel it? That rush of warmth flooding down your arm from shoulder to fingertips? That intense heat spreading through your forearm and into your palm? That tingling, almost electric sensation in your fingers? That's it. That's reactive hyperemia. The dam just broke. Blood that was backed up behind your squeeze point for the last 30 seconds is now exploding through your brachial artery at 300 to 400% of normal velocity. Picture a fire hydrant that's been closed. You suddenly open the valve. Water doesn't just flow out, it erupts. It blasts forth with tremendous force. That's what's happening in your artery right this second. The mechanism behind this is pure physics. When you compressed your brachial artery, you created a pressure gradient. High pressure upstream, low pressure downstream. Your heart kept pumping blood into your arm the entire time, but the outflow was restricted. Pressure built up behind the blockage. Meanwhile, downstream in your forearm, your blood vessels dilated maximally in response to adenosine, preparing to accept a massive influx of blood. When you release the compression, that pressure differential resolved instantly. High-pressure blood rushed into the dilated low-pressure vessels. Flow velocity skyrocketed. Normal resting blood flow velocity in your brachial artery is about 10 to 15 centimeters per second. Right now, in this moment, your flow velocity is 40 to 60 centimeters per second, 4 times normal speed. This creates intense mechanical friction against your vessel walls. Your endothelial cells are experiencing something called shear stress. Shear stress is the tangential force of flowing blood dragging across the endothelial surface. Imagine a river current pulling on rocks at the bottom of the riverbed. That dragging force is shear stress. Your endothelial cells are covered in a gel-like coating called the endothelial glycocalyx. This is a layer of proteoglycans and glycoproteins that acts like a non-stick coating on your vessel walls. It prevents blood cells from adhering. It prevents inflammatory molecules from sticking. It's your artery's Teflon layer. But as you age, as inflammation accumulates, as oxidative stress increases, this glycocalyx gets gunked up with damaged proteins, oxidized lipids, cellular debris. It becomes rough and sticky instead of smooth and slippery. The high-velocity blood flow you're experiencing right now is power washing that glycocalyx. The shear stress is stripping away the damaged material. It's scrubbing your vessel walls clean. This mechanical cleansing exposes the healthy endothelial cells underneath, and those cells respond by activating eNOS, endothelial nitric oxide synthase. This is the enzyme that produces nitric oxide from L-arginine, and right now your eNOS is working at maximum capacity. Nitric oxide is flooding into your bloodstream. Nitric oxide does 3 critical things simultaneously. First, it diffuses into the smooth muscle cells that wrap around your arteries. These smooth muscle cells control whether your vessels are constricted or dilated. Nitric oxide tells them to relax, to release their grip. Your arteries dilate even more. Resistance drops throughout your entire vascular system, not just in your arm. The nitric oxide enters your general circulation and causes systemic vasodilation. Your blood pressure is dropping right now. Second, nitric oxide inhibits platelet activation. Platelets are your clotting cells. When they get sticky and clumped together, they form dangerous clots that can block arteries and cause heart attacks or strokes. Nitric oxide keeps platelets smooth and non-reactive. It's anti-thrombotic, anti-clotting. Third, nitric oxide prevents leukocytes, white blood cells, from adhering to your vessel walls. When white blood cells stick to endothelium, they release inflammatory chemicals that damage the vessel and contribute to plaque formation. Nitric oxide blocks this adhesion. It's anti-inflammatory at the vascular level. So this one molecule, nitric oxide, is simultaneously dilating your vessels, preventing blood clots, and stopping inflammation. It's the ultimate cardiovascular protective agent. And you just triggered a massive release of it by doing a simple 30-second hand squeeze. We're at 20 seconds of rest now. Your blood flow velocity is starting to normalize. The initial flood is passing, but the nitric oxide effect continues. The molecule has a half-life of only a few seconds in your bloodstream, but the eNOS enzyme remains activated for several minutes. You're continuing to produce nitric oxide even as we speak. This sustained production is what creates the long-term benefits. You're not just getting a one-time burst. You're training your endothelial cells to remember how to produce nitric oxide efficiently. With repeated sessions over days and weeks, your baseline eNOS expression increases. Your vessels stay healthier longer. 25 seconds of rest. Almost time for round 2. Take a deep breath. Shake out your right hand gently. Flex your fingers a few times. We're going to switch to your left hand now. The protocol is identical. 30-second squeeze at 30% effort, breathing continuously, then 30 seconds rest. Ready? Transfer the object to your left hand. Get your grip set. Same intensity as before, about 1/3 of maximum. Here we go. Drop it. Let go completely. Open your hand wide. Spread your fingers apart. Relax every muscle in your arm and hand. Complete relaxation. Now pay close attention. Watch what happens. Round 2. Left hand squeeze. Phase squeeze now. Left hand, 30% effort. Breathe with me. Inhale through your nose. 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Establish that rhythm. Lock it in. This breathing pattern is protecting you from the Valsalva maneuver. Every exhale is releasing pressure from your chest cavity. Every inhale is refilling your lungs with oxygen for your heart muscle. Your cardiovascular system is stable and safe as long as you breathe. Your left brachial artery is now experiencing the same compression you created in your right arm. Blood flow restriction, ischemia building, lactate accumulating, adenosine releasing, vessels dilating maximally downstream, pressure increasing upstream. You know what's coming. You felt it in your right arm. That rush of reactive hyperemia is going to happen again in about 25 seconds. But this time, I want you to notice something different. Pay attention to whether the sensation is identical in both arms, or if one side feels more intense than the other. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 10 seconds in. Check your effort level. Still 30%? Not creeping higher? Good. Most people have a dominant arm that's stronger. If you're right-handed, your right arm's maximum squeeze is probably 10 to 15% stronger than your left. That means 30% of maximum in your left hand might feel slightly easier than it did in your right. That's completely normal. Don't compensate by squeezing harder. Trust the percentage. The metabolic response is what matters, not the absolute force. Your muscle cells are shifting into anaerobic metabolism again. They're producing ATP, cellular energy currency, without oxygen. This is an inefficient process. It generates lactate as a byproduct. You're building an oxygen debt. This debt must be repaid the moment you release the squeeze. Your body will flood your arm with oxygenated blood to clear that lactate and restore aerobic metabolism. That flood is the therapeutic event. That's reactive hyperemia. That's what activates eNOS and produces nitric oxide. Inhale. Don't hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 15 seconds. Halfway through. Your forearm muscles are feeling the burn now, aren't they? That's lactate accumulation. That's the signal we need. Your vessels are responding. Adenosine levels are rising. Vasodilation is maximal. Blood is backing up behind your squeeze point, creating pressure. Your endothelial cells are stretched and ready. There's something happening right now that I haven't mentioned yet. Your baroreceptors, those pressure sensors in your carotid arteries that we discussed earlier, are detecting a slight increase in blood pressure. Even though you're not squeezing hard enough to trigger a dangerous pressure reflex, there is a small rise in pressure from the mechanical compression and muscle contraction. Your baroreceptors are sending signals to your RVLM saying, pressure is slightly elevated. But here's the critical difference from chronic hypertension. This is acute, controlled, and temporary. Your RVLM interprets this as exercise stress, not pathological hypertension. It responds appropriately by preparing to vasodilate once the stress ends. Inhale through your nose. 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 20 seconds in, 10 seconds remaining. Your oxygen debt is substantial now. Your muscle cells have consumed their stored oxygen. They're depleting their phosphocreatine reserves. They're relying purely on anaerobic glycolysis. This metabolic stress is the stimulus that triggers the adaptive response. Your body doesn't want to be in this state. It's uncomfortable. So when you repeat this stimulus regularly, your body adapts. Your vessels become more efficient at delivering oxygen. Your endothelial function improves. Your nitric oxide production increases at baseline. This is training at the cellular level. You're not training your muscles to get stronger. You're training your endothelium to function better. 25 seconds, almost there. Hold that 30% squeeze. Keep breathing. Your eNOS is primed. Your adenosine levels are peaked. Everything is ready for the release. 28, 29, 30 seconds. Release now. Drop it. Open your left hand completely. Spread your fingers. Relax. Rest. Phase. There it is again. That rush of heat down your left arm. That flood of sensation. Reactive hyperemia strikes again. Your brachial artery is delivering high-velocity blood flow. The shear stress is scrubbing your endothelial glycocalyx. The eNOS enzyme is producing nitric oxide. But this time I want to explain what's happening at the molecular level inside your endothelial cells themselves, because understanding this mechanism helps you appreciate why this technique works when nothing else has. Your endothelial cells contain mechanoreceptors on their surface. These are protein channels that respond to physical force. When high-velocity blood creates shear stress, these mechanoreceptors detect the friction and open up. They allow calcium ions to flow into the cell. This calcium influx is the trigger inside your endothelial cells. Calcium binds to a protein called calmodulin. The calcium-calmodulin complex then activates eNOS, the enzyme we've been talking about. eNOS takes L-arginine, an amino acid floating in your bloodstream, and converts it into L-citrulline plus nitric oxide. The nitric oxide diffuses out of the endothelial cell within milliseconds. But here's what makes this so powerful for long-term blood pressure control. When you repeatedly stimulate eNOS through shear stress day after day, your endothelial cells respond by producing more eNOS enzyme. They upregulate the gene expression for eNOS. They manufacture more copies of the enzyme and embed them in the cell membrane. This means your baseline capacity to produce nitric oxide increases. Even when you're not doing the hand squeeze exercise, even when you're just sitting quietly, your endothelial cells are producing more nitric oxide than they were before you started this protocol. Your vessels stay more dilated. Your baseline blood pressure drops. This is fundamentally different from how blood pressure medication works. Medications force your vessels to dilate or force your heart to pump less forcefully, but they don't fix the underlying endothelial dysfunction. They don't restore your natural nitric oxide production. They override your body's control systems. This technique, Isometric Hand Grip Training, restores your body's natural regulatory mechanism. It fixes the broken system instead of fighting against it. We're at 20 seconds of rest. Your nitric oxide burst is continuing. The molecule is circulating systemically. It's dilating arteries in your legs, your abdomen, your brain. This isn't just a local effect in your arm. The nitric oxide enters your bloodstream and affects your entire vascular tree. Studies using flow-mediated dilation tests, where researchers measure how well arteries expand in response to increased blood flow, have shown that doing isometric exercise in one arm improves endothelial function in both arms and even in the femoral artery in your leg. The effect is whole body. There's another mechanism at work here that ties back to your RVLM and your baroreflex. When your vessels are producing abundant nitric oxide, they're more responsive to normal regulatory signals. Your baroreceptors might still be stiff and insensitive, but the vessels themselves are healthier and more compliant. They can dilate more easily when your RVLM lowers sympathetic tone. This improved vessel responsiveness is sensed by your RVLM through complex feedback loops. Your brainstem detects that your cardiovascular system is functioning well, and it responds by lowering the baseline sympathetic drive. The thermostat resets because the pipes are working properly again. 28 seconds of rest. Time to prepare for round 3. Back to your right hand. We're going to repeat the same squeeze protocol, but during the rest period after round 3, I'm going to explain what's happening in your carotid arteries and your RVLM during this entire process. That's where the real magic happens. That's where your blood pressure set point gets permanently reset. Transfer the object back to your right hand. Get your grip ready. Same 30% effort. Here we go. Round 3. Right hand squeeze. Phase. Right hand squeeze now. 30% effort. Lock it in. Breathe with me. Inhale through your nose. 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're a professional at this now. Third time through. Your body knows what's coming. Your endothelial cells are already anticipating the shear stress. Your eNOS is ready to respond faster than it did the first time. This is cellular memory. This is your vascular system learning. Compression of the brachial artery again. Restriction of blood flow. Ischemia building in your forearm muscles. Lactate accumulating. You know this sensation now. That dull ache in your muscles, that pressure in your hand. This is controlled metabolic stress. Safe, therapeutic, necessary to trigger the adaptive response we need. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 seconds. I want you to think about something while you're squeezing. Think about the fact that you're not taking any medication right now. You're not swallowing a pill. You're not getting an injection. You're not having surgery. You're squeezing an object and breathing. That's it. And yet, this simple mechanical act is triggering complex biochemical cascades that are more effective at lowering your long-term blood pressure than adding another medication to your regimen. This is the power of understanding physiology and working with your body instead of fighting against it. Your vessels are dilating behind the compression point. Your adenosine levels are rising. Your oxygen debt is accumulating. This is the third time in the last 6 minutes that you've created this metabolic state. Your body is starting to recognize this as a pattern, not a one-time event. It's beginning to adapt. Your gene expression is starting to shift. Your cells are preparing to produce more eNOS, more mitochondria, to handle the metabolic demand, more antioxidant enzymes to clear the free radicals produced during ischemia reperfusion. Inhale, don't hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 15 seconds. Halfway there. Your endothelial cells are stretched and compressed again. The mechanoreceptors on their surface are ready to detect the shear stress that's coming. Your eNOS enzyme is activated and waiting for the calcium influx that will fully turn it on. Everything is primed. There's an important concept in exercise physiology called hormesis. Hormesis is the principle that small doses of stress make you stronger. Lift weights and you damage muscle fibers, but they repair themselves stronger than before. Fast intermittently and you stress your cells, but they respond by improving their efficiency and resilience. What you're doing right now is vascular hormesis. You're stressing your endothelial cells with controlled ischemia and shear stress, and they're responding by becoming healthier and more functional. The stress is the signal. The adaptation is the benefit. Inhale through your nose. 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 20 seconds. 10 seconds remaining. Your body is remarkably intelligent. It doesn't like being in metabolic debt. It doesn't like having lactate build up in your muscles. So it's preparing to flood your arm with blood the moment you release. Your vasodilatory mechanisms are on standby. Your heart is ready to deliver high-flow blood. Your vessels are dilated and waiting. All systems are go. 25 seconds. 5 more. Hold that squeeze steady. Keep breathing. Your oxygen debt is maxed out. Your adenosine levels are peaked. Your pressure gradient is established. The dam is full. Almost time to break it. 28, 29, 30. Release now. Let go. Open your hand. Spread your fingers wide. Complete relaxation. Rest. Phase. The flood hits again. Reactive hyperemia for the third time. That rush of warmth. That tingling in your fingertips. High-velocity blood flow scrubbing your endothelial glycocalyx. Shear stress activating mechanoreceptors. Calcium flooding into endothelial cells. eNOS producing nitric oxide. The cascade repeats. But now I want to explain what's happening in your neck and your brainstem while all of this is going on, because this is where your blood pressure set point gets permanently reset. Your carotid arteries, the major vessels in your neck, contain those baroreceptors we discussed. These pressure sensors are supposed to detect when your blood pressure rises and send signals to your RVLM to lower sympathetic tone. But yours are stiff and insensitive from age-related arteriosclerosis. They're not functioning properly. This is baroreflex failure. However, your carotid arteries also contain chemoreceptors, different sensors that detect oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in your blood. These chemoreceptors are still functioning, even if your baroreceptors aren't. Right now, with nitric oxide flooding your system, your blood oxygen delivery is improving. Your tissues are getting more oxygen because your vessels are dilated and blood flow is increased. Your chemoreceptors sense this improved oxygenation. They send signals to your RVLM saying, the system is healthy, oxygen delivery is good, no need for elevated sympathetic tone. This is a different feedback loop than the baroreflex. It's the chemoreflex, and it's one of the ways we bypass your broken baroreceptors to reset your RVLM. But there's more. Your RVLM doesn't just receive input from baroreceptors and chemoreceptors. It also monitors something called vascular compliance, how easily your blood vessels expand and contract. When your endothelial function is poor, when you're not producing enough nitric oxide, your vessels become stiff. They resist dilation. Your RVLM senses this stiffness and interprets it as a need to maintain high pressure to force blood through rigid pipes. It's like pushing water through stiff, corroded, old pipes. You need more pressure to get the same flow. But when you restore endothelial function through repeated isometric hand grip training, your vessels become compliant again. They dilate easily. They're flexible and responsive. Your RVLM senses this improved compliance and recognizes that high pressure is no longer necessary. Lower pressure can achieve adequate blood flow because the pipes are working properly. This compliance feedback is another signal that tells your RVLM to lower your baseline sympathetic tone, to reset the thermostat to a lower setting. We're at 20 seconds of rest now. Your nitric oxide levels are still elevated. The molecule is still circulating, still dilating vessels throughout your body, still improving vascular compliance, still sending feedback signals to your RVLM. This is why one session of isometric hand grip training can lower your blood pressure for 6 to 8 hours afterward. The nitric oxide effect persists. The improved compliance persists. The altered RVLM signaling persists. But when you do this twice daily for weeks, something more permanent happens. Your RVLM literally rewires itself. Neuroplasticity works in your brainstem just like it works in your cerebral cortex. When your RVLM repeatedly receives signals that your vascular system is healthy, that oxygen delivery is good, That vessel compliance is improved. It adapts. It lowers its baseline sympathetic output. It resets the set point. New neural connections form that favor lower sympathetic tone. Old connections that maintained high tone weaken. Your brain physically changes its wiring to match the new reality of healthy vessel function. This is neuroplasticity applied to blood pressure control. You're not just temporarily dilating vessels, you're retraining your brain's cardiovascular control center. You're teaching your RVLM that lower pressure is safe, that your body can function perfectly well without elevated sympathetic drive. This learning takes time. This is why the protocol requires weeks, not days. But the adaptation, once it occurs, is stable. Your pressure stays controlled, even on days you skip the exercise because your RVLM's baseline set point has shifted. 28 seconds of rest. Almost time for the final round. This last round is going to complete the session. 4 complete ischemia reperfusion cycles, 4 reactive hyperemia events, 4 nitric oxide bursts. Your endothelial cells have been thoroughly stimulated. Your RVLM has received multiple feedback signals about improved vascular function. This final round seals the deal for this session. Transfer the object to your left hand one more time. Get ready. Here we go. Final round. Round 4. Left hand, final, squeeze phase. Left hand, final squeeze. 30% effort. Breathe with me. Inhale through your nose. 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is it. The last 30 seconds. Make them count. Maintain that effort level. Keep your breathing steady. Your body knows what to do now. Your vessels are primed for one more reactive hyperemia event. Your endothelial cells are ready for one more shear stress stimulus. Your RVLM is integrating all the feedback from the previous 3 rounds and preparing to incorporate this final signal. Compression of your left brachial artery one last time. Blood flow restriction. Ischemia building. Lactate accumulating. Adenosine releasing. The metabolic dance repeats. Your muscle cells are producing waste products. Your vessels are dilating maximally to prepare for the flood. Your pressure gradient is building. The setup is complete. Just 25 more seconds until the payoff. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 10 seconds in. Think about what you've accomplished in the last 10 minutes. You've triggered 4 separate reactive hyperemia events. You've produced 4 waves of nitric oxide. You've scrubbed your endothelial glycocalyx 4 times. You've sent multiple signals to your RVLM about improved vascular function. You've initiated cellular adaptations that will continue for hours after this session ends. And you did it all with nothing but a towel and your breath. No pills, no side effects, just physiology working the way it's supposed to work when you stimulate it correctly. Your endothelial cells are experiencing their 4th round of mechanical stimulation in 10 minutes. This repetition is key. 1 stimulus might trigger a response, but 4 stimuli in close succession trigger adaptation. Your cells recognize this as a sustained challenge that requires a systematic response. Gene expression begins to shift. Cellular machinery starts to change. This is the beginning of long-term remodeling. Inhale, don't hold your breath. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 15 seconds. Halfway through this final squeeze. Your oxygen debt is substantial. Your adenosine levels are high. Your vessels are dilated and ready. Your endothelial mechanoreceptors are waiting to detect the shear stress. Your eNOS enzyme is activated and poised to produce one more burst of nitric oxide. Everything is aligned for this final therapeutic event. I want you to appreciate something. The technique you're doing right now, isometric hand grip training, was studied intensively over the last 2 decades because researchers were trying to find non-pharmaceutical interventions for hypertension. They tested aerobic exercise. They tested resistance training. They tested yoga. They tested meditation. All of these helped somewhat. But isometric exercise consistently outperformed everything else for lowering resting blood pressure specifically. Why? Because it directly targets the mechanisms that control pressure: endothelial function, nitric oxide production, vascular compliance, RVLM regulation. It's not general fitness, it's targeted therapy. Inhale through your nose, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through your mouth, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 20 seconds, 10 to go. Your forearm is burning now. That lactate buildup, that oxygen debt, this discomfort is the signal your body needs. It's preparing to resolve this stress the moment you release. Your cardiovascular system is on standby, ready to deliver maximum blood flow. Your heart rate has probably increased slightly during this squeeze. That's normal. That's your sympathetic nervous system responding to the muscle work. But the moment you release, your parasympathetic system takes over. Heart rate drops, blood pressure falls, vessels dilate, the pendulum swings from sympathetic to parasympathetic. 25 seconds, almost done. 5 more seconds of this final squeeze. Hold that 30% effort. Keep breathing. You're about to complete a full 12-minute protocol that could lower your blood pressure by 10 to 15 points for the next 6 to 8 hours. That could prevent an afternoon spike. That could stop a morning surge. That could protect you from the stroke that was silently brewing in your stiffened arteries. 28, 29, 30. Release now. Final release. Let go. Open your hand completely. Spread all 5 fingers wide. Total relaxation. Final rest phase. There it is. That final rush. Reactive hyperemia hits one more time. The flood of warmth. The tingling. The heat spreading through your left arm. High velocity blood flow. Shear stress. eNOS activation. Nitric oxide production. The cascade completes for the 4th and final time this session. Your endothelial cells have been thoroughly stimulated. Your vascular system has been comprehensively challenged and is now adapting. Your RVLM has received clear signals that your vessels are healthy and functional. You just completed a medical intervention, not exercise, not a wellness activity. A medical intervention with documented mechanisms and proven efficacy for lowering blood pressure. Studies show that a single session of isometric hand grip training can reduce systolic pressure by 6 to 12 points for 6 to 8 hours afterward. That's comparable to some medications, but unlike medications, this intervention restored your body's natural regulatory mechanisms. It didn't override your physiology, it fixed it. Over the next 30 minutes, your nitric oxide levels will gradually return to baseline, but they won't return all the way to where they were before you started. Each session raises your baseline slightly. Each session upregulates your eNOS expression slightly. Each session improves your endothelial function incrementally. After 8 weeks of twice-daily sessions, your baseline nitric oxide production will be 20 to 30% higher than it was when you started. Your vessels will stay more dilated. Your blood pressure will stay lower. Your RVLM will maintain a lower sympathetic tone set point. This is cumulative adaptation. This is training at the cellular level. Your body is learning. Your endothelium is remembering how to function properly. Your RVLM is rewiring to accept lower pressure as normal. This doesn't happen overnight. This doesn't happen with one session or even 1 week of sessions. This requires consistent stimulus over weeks and months. But when the adaptation occurs, it's stable, it persists. Your pressure stays controlled because you fix the underlying system, not just mask the symptom. Take a deep breath now. In through your nose, deep into your belly. Hold it for 3 seconds. Now exhale slowly through your mouth, emptying your lungs completely. 1 more time. Deep breath in through your nose. Hold for 3. Exhale slowly through your mouth. Good. You've completed the protocol. 12 minutes from start to finish. 4 rounds of controlled ischemia and reperfusion. 4 reactive hyperemia events. 4 nitric oxide bursts. Your cardiovascular system has been reset for the next several hours. Check your blood pressure. Now, if you're tracking your blood pressure at home, check it now. Compare it to your reading before you started. Most people see an immediate drop of 8 to 15 points systolic. Some people see even more, especially if they were elevated to begin with. This immediate drop will gradually diminish over the next 6 to 8 hours as the nitric oxide clears from your system. 8 weeks of twice-daily isometric hand grip training stabilized his pressure at 128/80 throughout the day. His doctor eliminated 2 medications. These aren't isolated cases. These are typical results when the protocol is followed consistently. Now, I need you to do something for me. First, subscribe to this channel. Click that button right now. I'm going to continue sharing techniques and protocols that your doctor either doesn't know about or doesn't have time to teach you. This is information that could genuinely save your life, and I refuse to keep it locked behind medical jargon. Second, join Senior Health Daily. Click the link in the description. This is where I share comprehensive protocols, detailed instructions, and community support for people who are serious about taking control of their cardiovascular health. When you join, you'll get immediate access to my complete blood pressure reset guide, including additional techniques, supplement protocols, and meal timing strategies that amplify the effectiveness of what we just did. Third, I want you to comment below with your current blood pressure reading and commit to trying this protocol for 2 weeks. Right, I'm resetting my thermostat. Public commitment increases follow-through, and in 2 weeks, come back and report your results. I read every comment, and your success story could inspire someone else to take action. Remember what we covered today. The Hegu pinch triggers your opioidergic pathway to cut sympathetic tone immediately. The isometric hand grip training creates reactive hyperemia and shear stress, which activates eNOS to produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide restores endothelial function. Your RVLM senses healthy vessel function and lowers your baseline pressure set point. The thermostat resets, your pressure stabilizes, your medication works better. You might even reduce your doses under medical supervision. This isn't alternative medicine. This is mainstream neurophysiology recognized by the American Heart Association as valid adjuvant therapy for resistant hypertension. The research is published in top-tier cardiology journals. The mechanisms are documented. The results are reproducible. You just needed someone to explain it clearly and show you how to do it correctly. You have that information now. You have the power to reset your own RVLM. You have the ability to fix your broken baroreflex without surgery, without more pills, just with targeted nerve stimulation and controlled ischemia reperfusion that your body knows how to respond to instinctively. Start today. Do the Hegu pinch for 30 seconds. Do 4 rounds of isometric hand grip training. Do it twice daily for 8 weeks and track your pressure. Watch what happens. Your afternoon spikes will diminish. Your morning surges will flatten. Your pressure will stabilize throughout the day instead of swinging wildly. Your doctor will see the numbers and might reduce your medication. Your brain fog will lift. Your energy will return. Your dizziness when standing will resolve. These aren't just lower numbers on a screen. This is better blood flow to your brain, your heart, your kidneys, every organ in your body. This is reclaiming your health from a broken regulatory system that nobody else was addressing. You're not powerless against high blood pressure. You're not doomed to take more and more pills for the rest of your life. You have a brainstem that can be retrained. You have blood vessels that can remember how to make nitric oxide. You have a baroreflex that can be recalibrated. You just needed the right techniques and the right information. Now you have both. Take care of yourself. But if you do this protocol again this evening, you'll blunt your nighttime pressure and promote healthy nocturnal dipping. If you do it again tomorrow morning, you'll prevent tomorrow's morning surge. Day after day, session after session, the effects accumulate until your baseline pressure resets permanently. The complete protocol. Twice daily for 8 weeks. That's the complete 12-minute protocol. Do it twice daily, every day, for a minimum of 8 weeks. Track your pressure, watch the numbers drop, watch your afternoon spikes diminish, watch your morning readings stabilize, watch your doctor's face when you show them the data, and ask if you can reduce your medication dose. This is real. This works. This is physiology, not wishful thinking.